Who'll walk me down to church when I'm 60 years of age with the ragged dog they gave me is 10 years in the grave. God, how morbid is that? How sad is that? I remember when listening to that Elton John song way back, the self-titled record, the first record that us Americans really got into him with Your Song and everything. But that song, such a beautiful song. I thought I'd never get to 60. Well, welcome back to the channel. It's Mazzy. December 1965. I want to show you 5 records that came out around the same time. Now, a couple of these came out the very end of November, but 3 of these are 60 years old now that were released on the 3rd of December, the same day. 3 records on the same day. Now, there's a little bit of a movement of days and a couple of weeks between American and UK releases. Remember, back then, most of the time in 65 until the following year and then beyond, did the releases jive between the UK and the USA. And these are all British groups. I was 10 years old buying these records and getting these records for Christmas and Hanukkah that year. All of them. Actually, one of them I didn't get until a couple of years later, actually. I got the singles, but the spoiler, there's a Kinks record here I didn't get till several years later, but I got some of their singles because, anyway. But 3 of my all-time favorite bands were released. And it's amazing when you think about it in terms of records today. Now I'm going to sound like, oh, the old man talking about the olden days. That's what we do partially on the channel, talking about music from years gone by. But these are great friggin' records. Again, some of the butchering of the Americans with their American versions of the British counterparts. We're going to start with the one that if you are anywhere on the YouTubes and on the internets and on the Instagrams and the Facebooks, you saw this all day yesterday. So this recording, I'm recording this the day after the birthday of this record turned 60, Rubber Soul. Of course, this is the first flip back cover. This is the mono copy of the British edition, the way the Beatles intended. I love this, but I didn't hear this until probably 1968 because we had the Capitol version, which some Americans argue is the better version, a more folky, woodsy, smoky album, stereo and mono. And of course, even the difference in, I'm looking through you with the false start on the stereo than the mono. But of course, you can't deny the greatness of this album. This is all of a sudden the maturity of the Beatles and the album as a concept. This and Revolver back to back. So yeah, the Americans butchered it. Actually, they did quite a good job. So if they ever do release a 60th anniversary and a remix and all that, they need to include the American one. Come on, Apple. Come on, Beatles. But I don't know. I don't think these, even the stereo, these don't need remixes. So all you people exploding and wanting the remix, I mean, it doesn't need it. But outtakes, like, that'd be great, right? All the outtakes, the little probably there are. But I mean, this opens up with Drive My Car. What a great opening. But this drives, I've Just Seen a Face. It opens up with I've Just Seen a Face. And that is so friggin' cool. Different vibe completely. Nowhere Man is on this. How could you not have Nowhere Man on this? Because we got it several months earlier on Yesterday and Today in the States. So, that debate's going to go on forever. And I totally understand. If I grew up with this, I'd be pissed off at those Yanks, cutting this record up and putting it out like this. So anyway, 1965, 60 years old. Happy birthday, Rubber Soul, with this fantastic photograph by Robert Freeman, who did, 5 of their albums, their first 5 albums, except one. Which one? I'm blanking out right now. He did With the Beatles. He didn't do Please Please Me, obviously. He did With the Beatles. He did Help. He did Hard Day's Night. He did Rubber Soul. Some of his pictures are in the montage on Revolver, but he presented an album for that. He didn't, and he did Beatles for Sale. So the Beatles help. Got to start with the Beatles. Now, Beatles versus the Rolling Stones is always that big prize fight of the world of the year. But in America, now America was butchering even Rolling Stones records. London Records was taken from Decca and putting singles on things and compiling things. But on the same day in America, the exact same day, the Rubber Soul came out, December's Children came out in America. I love this cover. This is taken from the earlier album. This never came out in the UK. This is really a comp of a collection of songs, of singles. It does have hits of America at the time. Get Off My Cloud, a song that my garage band did. I love that song. Route 66. You know, there's a lot of covers. The Stones are still digging in and doing the bluesy and R&B covers. As Cheers Go By, though, is on here, which Marianne Faithfull had a hit first, even though Jagger and Richards wrote it. She recorded it first in their version. That was, I feel like, the second single in America, I think. But again, mono and stereo versions. Don't get the stereo versions of these records in America. These are rechanneled for stereo, electronically rechanneled. They don't sound as bad as people say, though. But Rolling Stones rechanneled for stereo. Get the mono ones or get the UK, but obviously this doesn't have exact UK counterpoint. So the Rolling Stones, following in the Beatles' footsteps. I kid. Also, on that exact day, the debut album from The Who, December 3rd, 1965, in the UK. This wouldn't come out until the following year with a different cover in America. Little changed up. But this is the real deal. This is the British edition of this album. A lot of R&B stuff also, like the Stones. You know, the Beatles were getting more into the writing for themselves, obviously, which they always did from the get-go. But they were obviously leaving behind the cover songs for the most part. But you got on here, My Generation. And to me, My Generation is probably one of those perfect singles of 1965. Great, great song. That just exploded out in the world and really it kind of laid the groundwork for what The Who would become. Powerful song, wonderful song on here. The Kids Are All Right, too. Of course, the documentary was called that. Another great kind of mod, powerful rock and roll song. They do mix in all their bluesy numbers on here, too. Please Please Me, the James Brown tune on here, too, which is pretty ballsy for these little white kids, you know, from the UK doing a James Brown song. La 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 Lies. But there are some originals on here. I see more than half of the things are originals on here. But The Who, this is My Generation, December 3rd, 1965, in the UK. There we go with that one. Now, this came out, I think, 3 days later in America, December 6th, I believe. And I have three of my favorite groups in this video of all time. This was Turn, 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 the Byrds' second album. This is the mono. This is the stereo on Columbia Records. Roger McGuinn wrote some more songs finally, because obviously in the first album it was Gene Clark who was getting all the checks in his mailbox, the publishing royalty checks, because they were doing so many covers too. The folk scene, the folk rock scene. This is the band, the Byrds, that Rickenbacker 12-string, which really epitomized that sound. Of course, Turn, 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 all over the hit. Their second, third big single. Pete Seeger adapted the Book of Ecclesiastes and turned it into this great song, folk song, and the Byrds created the folk rock version, which is a massive hit. Again, that jingly jangly guitar. But you have originals also on here by Gene Clark as well, and Chris Hillman too. And you got the obligatory Bob Dylan covers that they do fantastically. Is that a word? Yeah, fantastically. Well, it is now. Lay Down Your Worried Tune. Beautiful Dylan song. And of course, the times they are a-changin'. What a great record. The liner notes are by Derek Taylor, who became the Beatles publicist and then worked with the Byrds, worked with the Beach Boys, and he writes the liner notes. He's from the Press and Public Relations Officer for the Byrds. Great. I mean, the Byrds really were the big answer to the Beatles in America. We had the Beau Brummels first for a minute, but of course, this is the one. As original as they are, they really got famous on covers more than their own work until a little bit later. On here also is a great adaptation of a song, He Was a Friend of Mine. Roger McGuinn changes the lyrics, adds to it, and really adapts it. So there's a reference to JFK's assassination. He was a friend of mine, about John F. Kennedy. And a kind of a fun end-up version. Remember, Roger McGuinn comes from the folk scene, and he does a kind of a minimal, wonderful closing version of Oh, Susanna on here. The Byrds, Turn, Turn, Turn. Amazing record. I think this is produced by Terry Melcher. Yes, it is. Terry Melcher. Is that Doris Day's son? Great record. Of course, great record. 1965, 60 years. Happy birthday. Lastly, the Kinks, my other favorite band. Now, these came out at the end of November. Kinks, Kinkdom. Everything was kink back from Reprise Records. Everything was kink. And the interesting story is towards the end of 1964, I remember specifically, I don't know why, it was a moment. My father and I were outside our house. We lived for a while down in Menlo Park, California, down near Stanford University, south of San Francisco, on the cul-de-sac. The irony, or the coincidence, the cul-de-sac's name was Harrison Way. And when I first heard the Beatles when I was 10, was on Harrison Way. How prosthetic. What a mind fuck that is, right? 10-year-old kid, 9.5-year-old when I saw the Beatles and Ed Sullivan on Harrison Way, sitting on the floor of my next door neighbor. We were 5 Harrison Way. Look it up. The house is like $4 million now. My parents bought it for $12,000. We should have kept it. Rest in peace, my parents, you know. But Harrison Way, the Beatles, this 1965, that's where I lived then. But this is a comp in a way. Well, it's a collection of EPs and songs and singles and B-sides and all that stuff. And Reprise again, up until the next year in 66, they finally coincided with the UK editions. But into 64, 65, very different records, the American and the British. But Well-Respected Man, end of November 65, Kingdom. Now, they were still doing their R&B stuff, like all these, like the Stones and the Who, a lot of R&B stuff. I mean, the Beatles, you know, were the fastest to really adapt to their all original recordings for the most part. But the big standout track here that showed the maturity of Ray Davis's writing is the opening track on this, and that's A Well-Respected Man. See My Friends is also a great song on here. I mean, the whole thing is great. Who'll Be the Next in Line? I love that. I mean, what a great collection. Now, this is the British edition. This is the British record that came out. Different record completely. I think this is one of the greatest covers in rock and roll. I mean, it's simple, it's concise. Those of you who know the band Sleater-Kinney know that they emulated this cover to a T. I think several other bands as well, because one of those classic covers, even like the Beatles album in Beatles' second album in America, with all the kind of collection of images. Yo La Tengo did a version of that cover for them, and a few other bands recreated that album cover. Obviously, a lot of album covers were imitated or mocked or loved and recreated for their band. But kink controversy. Of course, the Kinks were never without controversy, arguing on stage, fighting brothers. We know this. But again, a lot of blues stuff on here. Milk Cow Blues, which is an original. So they even wrote in that style too. Got to Get the First Plane Home. Till the End of the Day is on here. And side 2, World Keeps Going Round, I'm on an Island. Where Have All the Good Times Gone? Again, that was original. It's Too Late. But you get more of the R&B sound on here, but this is a great rock and roll record with obviously R&B influences. Just a cool record. This is the mono reissue from the mono box. I don't think I have an original pie of this. Shal Talmy produced these. Nicky Hopkins is all over this one. He plays, I think, on 1 or 2 tracks on this one. A great piano player. He's all over it. Raisa Davis, Ray's wife at the time, sings a lot of the backgrounds on a lot of the songs on early Kinks records. Some people don't know that. But the Kinks, 60 years old. 60 fucking years ago, these records came out, and we're still talking about it. And of course, we're still listening to this great music. So happy birthday to Rubber Soul, December's Children, Turn, 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 My Generation, and Controversy and Kinkdom. God save the Kinks. Mazzy loves you. Get that peace sign going. I feel like Ringo. What's my name?